And here we are
Yeah,
for an episode
nice.
of Dualistic Unity Social. It's been a while since we've done a social episode. It feels like. I say it's been a while just because, my God, every day is so full. There's so many things that happen in a day when you really just slow down to watch them happening instead of thinking about what it means about you all the time to the point where you can't notice anything. So I'm just pumped to get this episode started. I want to say hi to everybody who could join us live today. Or if you can't join us live today, if you're listening to this after the fact, hi. Doesn't really matter. We have a call in show in about an hour from now. I'm looking forward to the call in show. I hope we get a good amount of callers. I know at the moment there are a few people who are upset with me in the social media arena. There's somebody on TikTok specifically who insists that as they struggle to understand Christianity versus atheism, they consider my point of view. They didn't say, the podcast. They're like your point of view to be incredibly naive, which I thought was fascinating. I have thoughts about that, so I hope they do call in, and because that'll be a great aspect of the show. But if you would like to call in, please do join us. It's been a hell of a day, admittedly. We were supposed to have an episode of Being High this morning, which didn't work out. But that didn't stop us from going out and doing that anyway. And then we took a walk. We decided to have a meeting about some of the changes coming up in season 7. One of those changes, actually, and this is where I come full circle to the point of why I went down that tangent, is the fact that we're going to be doing more call-in shows. The ratio of call-in show to roundtable is going to change slightly. We're going to do one
Yes.
roundtable per month, and all the other Tuesdays are going to be call-in shows.
Woohoo!
We're doing this because, frankly, we like talking to all of you. We know not everybody can join us on Patreon, and we figure with a few fewer roundtables, Patreon members may be able to schedule it a little earlier to make sure they can come, and we might see a few more of those as we get into the fall. So
Right.
I'm looking forward to doing that and connecting with everyone. Shout out to our Patreon members, by the way. You've been incredibly patient for just the content in terms of old archived group discussions. We've been so busy after the round of investments. We've been so busy in terms of just other stuff. The business is really growing. There's a lot of stuff happening at the moment that we just haven't been able to keep up with posting the archived videos. Did that again today. We've got another 20 hours scheduled for the rest of this week to be dropped day by day. So if you're looking for old discussions that have never seen the light of day in terms of being on an episode, discussions with old Patreon members, discussions with current Patreon members, definitely jump onto Patreon because we're going to be posting more and more and more of those as we move on into season 7. And that's it for my opening. I'm going to sit back and enjoy the sweet voices of my co-hosts.
Yeah, it's fun. It's fun looking back at things and kind of taking, a good look at business and moving forward and whatnot over the last couple weeks, and I don't know, having a little bit more of a strategy with things. I think sometimes you can get caught up in, oh, do you want a strategy? Do you want to be totally open ended with things and just like every day not really have a to do list and just kind of see what pops up and take things in different direction. I think understanding that there's no perfect formula to that, and like it does just come down to a personal sort of response to things. Like am I gonna focus really heavily on trying to control everything and have a schedule and think that that's going to guarantee that my life's going to be super incredible, or am I going to loosen my grip up on my life a little bit and have a little bit of a balance of what life is all about. Like where exactly am I going? Am I trying to, you know, improve myself as I go, or am I being attentive to what's actually happening? Because you can live your whole life and not be super attentive moment to moment, but there is that feeling of uncertainty that kind of comes with that, or that willingness to just pay attention without thinking so much or jumping to so many conclusions right away, and kind of being focused on the response in your head versus the response that's actually happening reality. And so finding that balance has been, yeah, I mean, everyone, I guess, kind of goes through that at their own pace, and there's no right
Oh
answer
yeah.
for sure. But being willing to look at that maybe there isn't some hard coded, thing that you can do to live life correctly, and being willing to kind of let that assumption go can help a lot.
Well, yeah, I think it's so I side note, I definitely love that we're going to be doing more call-in shows, and that more people are going to have, or that there's more potential that, you don't have to be a Patreon member to chat with us. So I do look forward to seeing everyone, and thank you to our Patreon supporters, because you guys are awesome. And the podcast, I was a Patreon supporter, and I stopped because I was just like, well, I'm investing my money in other ways, so it's a little different. It felt so awkward for me to cancel my tier 3 membership like last month, guys. Like I just did that, and I was just like, that's all right. I'm gonna spend my money a little differently, but I thought of it as an investment, and I hope that many of you see it in the same way, where you are investing not only maybe the $5 a month for the tier 1 membership, but your time, your support, your effort, your attention, and all of that means so much. So thank you for continuing to, be on this ride with us, and see where it goes, because it's been a hell of a ride, and I'm really glad to be here with all of you, and I look forward to chatting with you about it. But Andrew, when you were saying like having like a hard code, that sounds like a hard rule, which for me implies like limited considerations. I'm thinking that with a certain guaranteed consideration, I can apply that to all situations, and I don't have to pay attention anymore. And that's what I got from that, because really it is generally the same, pay attention as much as you can, right? You can do that in any moment. We were talking in a previous episode, about, what can you do, with what's available right now? What could that mean? And it's like, you could enjoy this moment. That's something that you can always do. You don't have to be in conflict with this moment. You can take in, you can take a stock of how many considerations you might be considering. And if you're feeling a lot of tension, a lot of anxiety, a lot of fear, a lot of insecurity, you might be taking in very few considerations. And by few, I mean probably one. You. The consideration of you and how you feel and what you want and what you're getting or what you're not getting or what you're giving up. But it all boils down to the consideration of you. So if you are, you can always take in more. You can always make new considerations. You can always add to the consideration of your experience, but it's like, but also what else is happening outside of your opinion? What else is happening outside of just your individual experience? What else is available? And that's enjoying the moment with everyone and everything that is quote unquote surrounding you.
Yeah. And not assuming that there's a way to like prove that, like show that you're even, I don't know, enjoying it, and just like doing it yourself because this is your life. And it's like, why would you be at conflict with anything? But so much, especially previously throughout my life, it's definitely been like looking forward to something, or even, and Levi and I were chatting this morning after our yoga session. Shout out Levi with Levi,
Hey.
mental stretching, being yoga. Levi's the man, but just about about thoughts and how much that can be sort of a distraction. Like he was giving an example of like being focused more, which I just realized myself on not slouching so much,
yes, right.
and like it actually kind of feels better to be sitting upright as opposed to being slouched. But there's like a comfort in being slouched, and when you're more upright, you're paying more attention, and maybe you get more waves of feelings, and then thinking in response to that is a way to distract yourself from kind of the intense uncertainty of being present moment to moment. But also it's like, I don't know, there's a balance with relaxation too, because I think remaining relaxed while being, I don't know, more upright in a position like there isn't so much concern one way or the other, as that's, the case. But yeah, I don't know. Sometimes thoughts can feel like just straight up distraction from what's actually going on.
Oddly enough, in the name of getting in control of what's going on, and that's really it. But it helps to remember that. It's just like it's kind of a fear response, and that's all it is. It's like I'm going to think about things to give myself a sense of control where there is no sense of control otherwise. That's really the only way I can do it, is to make a bunch of assumptions. So now I can make a plan according to those assumptions. But that's, in the art of war, a plan is only as good as the first thing that goes wrong.
Right.
And that's the point, is there are always things that you can't consider. There are always things that you're not looking at. And so we ignore that. We deliberately ignore that we can be biased. We really do. And even if we address the fact that we can be biased, even if we admit to ourselves that we can be biased, we don't want to admit that we are biased. And we don't want to admit that we wouldn't know because we're biased. Right? Like, we can lie to ourselves and completely ignore that fact.
Yeah.
Because it's uncomfortable to admit. And do that for so long that we forget we're ignoring that fact. And that's really all there is to being self-honest, is just to continue on and moment to moment go, oh, wow, is that knee-jerk response place of fear? Like, do I need to do that thing, or is that a bias? Is that just because I've always thought I needed to do that thing? Do I really need to do that thing? What would happen if I couldn't do that thing? What if I could have never done that thing? What then? Right? This is why, the discussion about religion is something I always find fascinating, because so often there is just this either deliberate ignorance or denial that religion didn't create the connection to God. Like, religion came after all of the potential ideas that there was a God. It's not that religion created these things. They're just ideas. Religion is just kind of poaching on thoughts that we can all have. Maybe the universe doesn't end. Maybe existence just continues on. Maybe I'm not in control. Maybe I'm just going to go through this experience of moment to moment existence. Like, that is all there is. Maybe we're not all separate from one another. All of these insights eventually came down to being interpreted through a fear. Right? And that's the problem, is that most religion is really based on trying to soothe the fear. There's some order to all this. There's some sense that you can make of it. There's some sense of control. You can live rightly. You can live wrongly. There's someone who's calling the shots, and they have an idea of what's right and wrong, so you just need to do that, as opposed to just carry on. Carry on, live your life, and really be honest with yourself about your biases. That's really it. Like, if you have a bias towards needing to feel soothed, like if you feel afraid, you're going to have a bias. You're going to have this urge to reach for something that makes you feel secure. It's kind of like what you were saying earlier about the intensity of uncertainty. Uncertainty is only intense if you're clinging to certainty. If you're reaching for certainty, uncertainty sucks. But if you recognize there really is no lasting certainty, there's no lasting certainty. There's a best approximation, right? There's a guess. And we operate most of our world on that, right? But there's no lasting certainty. You don't know tomorrow we're all going to wake up and the planet will be here, right? It has been so far, and we all operate under the premise that it will be. You don't know you won't die tomorrow, but you operate under the premise that you will be, or that you will not be. Rather, like, perhaps if you operated under the other premise, don't do that either. The point is that, it's not intense until you're looking for that sense of stability. And the only reason you're looking for a sense of stability is because you lack faith in yourself. And that's only because you're trying to have an idea of yourself that can conquer the universe. That's really it.
Know everything.
Exactly. Then there's nothing to fear.
He-Man.
You know, and
I have the power.
Masters.
it's all mine. Well, and that goes with that sense that you can know what you're expressing, you know, assuming that people see you exactly how you see yourself, despite that never being the case, you know. And so when you're willing to let that go, or willing to understand that you're a question mark to everyone who sees you, you're a question mark too. There isn't that so much of a need for that sense of control, but it can feel like, you know, as you start to relax a little bit more, you know, that sense of stagnation or staying the same or acting how you've always acted or trying to. It's like there can be pulls to do that. And you mentioned something earlier with the soothers, and when, you know, if it was something that you couldn't do. Like there's so many things like that, like so many, even for example, like say I've heard a number of times throughout my life, like working out's good for your mental health. And it's like, oh, if I don't work out, I feel a certain way about myself. And I wondered about that this year, because that's something that I always felt like, you know, oh, it means, you know, as long as I'm working out 2-3 days a week minimum, like I'm good. And then I was like, wait a second, what's there if I didn't do that? Why do I feel that way? Like, what if I couldn't work out? And there's so many things that are like that. Like, what if, you know, how would you feel about your life if you didn't have something that maybe you're grateful for? And that's the conversation of gratitude. When that kind of, you know, dropped for me, was like, okay, what if I didn't have anything that I was grateful for? Could I still wake up and live my life fully? The same with, you know, meditation. It was the thing that became a soothing sort of, oh, did I meditate today? If I did, I could handle the day. As opposed to, what if, you know, what if you don't have these things? Like, what if you don't have the thing that you think in your head is going to like solve your life or fix your life?
Yeah, but
or
there's
make you
different
better?
contexts, right? So like think about water. We need water to survive, but you drink too much water, you will dilute your blood and kill yourself. Right? That is something that we can't go without. We absolutely need to drink water, but excessive amounts of water do damage. And so working out is a great example. You know, working out, being active, you know, living an active lifestyle has a lot of benefits. You don't need to go to the gym to live an active lifestyle, but we associate going to the gym with health. But that is one expression and one very in a vacuum like experience, an expression of health in a gym. But it's just being active. You can do that anywhere, and that has long-term benefits, you know, but it's the context, you know, where is the idea, where's the impulse, where's the choice to go to the gym coming from? In the same way as where's the choice of drinking water? You know, if you told yourself I had to drink 20 cups in a day, you might dilute your blood, you know, but why would you convince yourself of that? You don't, you know, but you could, you know, but it's still something that, depending on the consideration, depending on the context, it's not a bad thing in and of itself. It's more so where is it coming from that could be closer looked at.
Yeah. And again, and as you said, you know, that's specifically with something that you need, you know, but there's so many things that we don't, you know, and that's is we confuse wants with needs. You know, there are very few needs. This is something that actually drove me to the forest for those 8 months. How little do I actually need? You know, and not to survive, but to be okay, be at peace, not feeling conflict, not feel like I was lacking, to actually have nothing and not feel like I had nothing. There was no change in how I felt about my value. There was no change in how I felt about how people perceived me, because I recognized they didn't see me anyway. And that's what I mean. Like, a lot of what we think of as needs aren't. You know, that really is it. Like, I need people to like me. You don't know how people see you. And even if you did, you don't know that they're seeing the real you. Right? Because, again, you're biased. You have a bias. It's like, oh, no, this person thinks I'm awesome. Therefore, they see the real me.
That's all of me, right? That you know, they think I'm awesome, and they are saying that about all of me. And it's like, no, they're saying a sliver of a sliver is awesome. You know, it's not even you, it's their perception of you in that moment. And that's what they're reflecting back to you. But someone could not mean it when they say, I really, I really love your unique life. And that's supposed to be a compliment. And that they're telling you, it's unique. Maybe they don't love it. But you're hearing, I really like your life. And you think that that person likes you. You think that that person's complimenting you. You don't know where these things are coming from. So you're assuming that someone thinks you're awesome. But you don't really know that for sure. And you don't need them to. Because if they don't like you, you're still going to wake up. There's a great possibility you're going to wake up tomorrow. Whether they like you or not.
Seriously.
Life goes on.
Yeah. Like it's not actually and that's the difference between like, physical dangers versus not, is so many of the, psychological things that focus on have nothing to do when you ask yourself, like, am I in danger? Like, actually, it's like that's been such a shift in the world, humanity is majority of the time you're not in any danger whatsoever.
But I
And
panic often.
Yeah.
I
Well, you
may
can
not always
panic
be in danger, but I panic
Yeah,
like I'm
'cause-
in danger.
Exactly. You're holding yourself up to a bar. It's like, I might not reach the bar. Oh,
my
no.
God.
Oh my gosh.
They're gonna
Yeah.
stone me in the city center.
Yeah.
We act like we're living in
They're gonna
like
string me
the
up.
pilgrim times,
Yeah.
and they're just gonna. That's what will they say?
Mm-hmm.
They're gonna talk about me in the sewing circles. It's like,
Yeah, you're living your whole life like that. That's going to be a very tense life if that's the focus on, how you try to control how you're seen, and being willing to not even like let go of that, but just be willing to understand that you don't know. You're never going to know. There's never going to be a thing one way or the other that guarantees anything.
Well, and especially, and this is the one that I love, let's just assume everybody views you as being awesome.
okay,
That doesn't actually indicate that you are.
no.
No.
Like, that's not actually an objective measure of your awesomeness. What if everybody's a douche? What if they're all like, yeah, you're the best of the douches,
Yeah,
but nobody knows they're a
you're
douche?
the biggest douche in the
You
universe.
know what I mean? Like,
they
that's-
gave you an
that's
award.
kind of exactly it. Like, everybody around you is just completely self-involved, and they're like, "Yes, you are the ultimate in terms of self-involvement. I want to be like you.
Right.
Because
You make
I am
obsession
still
look good."
self-involved." It's like it's not a measure,
No.
and so that's another thing we don't want to look at. The fact that there is no measure of how we're doing. There is really is no measure of what kind of person you are, how much value you have. There really is just potential. The potential for whatever it is you can express in whatever way you want to direct your will. And that's awesome. Like when you really break it down, but there's no certainty in that. You really have to be good with yourself. You really have to be good with yourself. And there's no way to be good with yourself, again, lastingly, in being good with an idea of yourself. I'm a really calm person. People like me. I'm a good listener. I'm very insightful. I'm very kind to animals and children and stuff like that. Like, like that in no way makes you anything. Those might be things that you do, but what if the stakes were higher? What if things were a little harder? What if you were super poor, had no control, you were afraid? Would you be so kind? Would you do these nice things? Because it's easy to go, oh, I give to the homeless. I volunteer. I love to be kind to my neighbors. I'm always helping people and chatting them up. Yeah, well, you're comfortable in your life, but what if you were late on your rent, you didn't have enough for groceries, you've got multiple kids, and somebody's knocking at the door while you're trying to feed the baby, and there's other shit happening, and you're like, what?
Yeah.
What do you want? And they're just like, Jesus, what the fuck is wrong with you? Do you see? Like right there. And that's when it's hard. It's hard when you're afraid to not put yourself first because you're afraid. But that's why it's so worthwhile. Because it's hard. That's how you know it's worthwhile. It's hard. Right?
Yeah, and there's like always that opportunity also, because if you're comfortable and like in that mode of just like kind of not having to take too many considerations in, if you get to that point, and a response to that is so often like, well, I worked hard to earn what I got and blah blah blah, but it's like what is your life like? What's your experience like day to day? Like, how many things are coping mechanisms? How many, hours of your day are spent, trying to do the right thing and having some sense of rigidity because you don't want to fully express yourself, or, you're afraid of fully expressing yourself. And then that begs a much different question, about how you're living your life, when it isn't so much about, thinking about yourself in a certain way. What you're left with is your response. Like, there's something new you want to try. Like, are you willing to even try something new? Express yourself in a different way. Like, do something that you're afraid of. Like, and again, that's not, I don't know, that's not really an indicator necessarily one way or the other of how relaxed you are. But I think, yeah, it's really just self-honesty. Like, am I focused on how much potential I have to do things in the world, or am I focused on, trying to be something personally, selfishly, individually? Am I trying to become the best? And it's like, that's not really for. The inverse is for yourself. The, trying to be something, trying to be perfect is for everyone but you.
Mm-hmm.
It's for how you feel, sure, but trying to have, I guess, that sense of control of how you're feeling about yourself all the time, instead of not needing that. And then, you can kind of jump into anything.
Right. I mean, before we went live, we were chatting and we were talking about soothing ourselves. Like the self-soothing, like the smoking cigarettes. Maybe excessively going to the gym or sweet tooth. That I loved junk food. But it's like we notice the soothing part when it gets excessive, but we don't really always acknowledge where that comes from. It's like you're soothing yourself after agitating yourself. And so you wouldn't really have such a struggle it wouldn't be so hard to let go of the soothing if you could see how easily you agitate yourself and immediately go to the soothing to try to make yourself feel better about something you didn't need to feel bad about to begin with. But we focus a lot on the soothing. I need to stop smoking. It's like you could stop stressing yourself out to want to smoke, to need to smoke. So the smoking in and of itself doesn't have to be viewed as like this super bad toxic habit that like you have to like somehow overcome.
Mm-hmm.
You could zoom out and take another consideration, what's leading to it. And I like there's a Canadian psychologist, I always forget his name. It starts with a G. And he talked about like addiction being like a human like it's such a universal experience to have an addiction. And I think that there's a great point in that, because there's an addiction to thought. There's an addiction to an identity. There's an addiction to thinking, and you're thinking about, am I making the right choice? Am I making the wrong choice? Am I living? It's like, well, if you're thinking, you're likely not living, because rarely I have yet to see somebody who can do both at the same time. You are either thinking or you are doing. You are thinking or you are living, and it's like, sounds very black and white, but it feels very much infinite shades of gray when you're actually doing it, because the thinking gets so all consuming, all engulfing, that it feels like that is your whole life. And to some degree, that is your whole life, is that thought. It's that one thought that you are so zoomed in on, that is your whole life. But as much as that is the focus of that whole life, that is not actually living that life, in my opinion. And so I tend to ask, to differentiate for myself, like, if I'm thinking about how I am doing, I am likely not doing anything else. So how about we just see what's available in this moment? What could I actually do right now? And not what are the infinite things? What's the to-do list that I need to do to live a good life? What's the one thing that I could do right now?
Yeah. If it didn't mean anything about you, what would make sense?
And it's so much easier to choose from that place than good choice, right choice, because that means you're thinking about the chooser. There's a good chooser and a bad chooser, and it's like, fuck, man, just make a choice.
Well, that's like survivalism 101. Like, if you're in the forest, don't panic.
It doesn't help. It feels like you're doing something. It's like I'm doing something. And that's it's the
Thank
same
you,
with
Captain
anything.
Obvious. Of course we don't panic.
But you know what I mean?
Oh,
Like,
we do
but
that all the
that's
time.
the rule is you
That
don't
can be
get
the
caught up
immediate.
Yeah.
in your situation. Don't go, oh my God, I'm so screwed. I can't get out of here. You slow the fuck down, you breathe, and you start to address the problems.
Yes.
I don't know where I am. Okay, can I establish direction? You know, I don't have shelter. If I can't find a way to get attention, you know, if there's no way for me to start a fire and get some smoke, if there's none of that stuff, right? Then what can I do? Okay, I need shelter. Now how am I going to stay warm? Okay, now I need to figure out fire for the nighttime, you know, things like that. There, none of it in there is, you know, and if I don't, I'm a failure, because the more time you spend thinking about that, the less time you're actually making that goddamn shelter.
Right. The closer the bear gets.
Right? And that's exactly what it is. But that's life. And we don't think of it because everything is so goddamn controlled. We don't have to think of any of that. We don't have to worry about, like, think about what time it is, how long we've got until the sun goes down, because we have lights everywhere. You know, we don't have to worry about, you know, how we're going to feed ourselves. There's a convenience store on the corner. If I walk a little further, there's a superstore.
Yeah.
You know, like things like that. It's totally different now. And so we've very much forgotten what the experience of life is. The experience of life is what makes sense next without you being the focal point in terms of your value. Because it doesn't help you any. It didn't even make sense at one point, and it doesn't make sense now. Anybody who doesn't know what I'm saying, just go into the bush. Just go and live in the bush for a week and do it minimally. Don't bring a gun. Don't bring a tent.
Don't bring a cooler.
Just go. You know, and what you'll realize very quickly is, oh shit, I only know of like 2 or 3 plants that I can eat. You know, if you know 2 or 3 plants is what I'm saying. Like, there really is a, fuck, I need to pay attention to what's in front of me priority, as
Yeah.
opposed to I need to pay attention to how I feel about what's in front of me. That doesn't help you at all. And a lot of what our focus is now is how we feel about a thing rather than what we can actually do with that thing.
Straight up. Yeah. So much of it is that, like, now that we can just have the thought, you know, for example, of, oh, I'm hungry. I don't have to go and cook something and get food and do all of these steps to satisfying that hunger. I can just go into my fridge and grab a snack, go into my pantry and grab a snack. And so, and then it can very quickly become like, oh, I'm hungry, right? Or I want to eat right now. And it's like, oh, am I hungry? Or am I, you know, habitually snacking? And it's like, shut the fuck up. Like, just, if you want to eat, go eat. And it doesn't, that's not proving something. If you don't eat, just, that's not proving something. But because there is less actual, or it can feel like that, especially, you know, in a first world country, there can feel like, you know, so much more convenience. It's like what we're left with is to think about ourselves, because we don't have to think about all that stuff. This is something we talked about in one of our early seasons as well, just how little awareness is really necessary throughout your day, especially, you know, if you have sort of a consistent, repetitive schedule, that you have everything, you know, blocked off throughout your day. There can be, you know, a balance with that where it leaves space to be attentive when you're not trying to keep all of that in mind. But there can also be that, you know, sense of, you know, crossing the street when there's a walk sign and you don't have to look both ways. You just
Yeah.
follow the walk sign, but that's still, there's no guarantee with that.
Yeah, I mean, I
Exactly.
still look both ways, even when I am in a crosswalk and I have the signal, and I'm still looking because I'm like, you know, just because that's like the socially promoted like guarantee, it's not a guarantee. There is somebody who is not paying attention as they're driving. You know, like it's gonna happen, you know, and it's not intentional. Sometimes they're thinking about paying rent because on this planet we charge people to live on the earth that they were born on, you know, ridiculous. But we still do it. So people still stress about their rent, you know, people stress about food, and it's just there are so many things that people are juggling, and I do my best to remember that. And so I pay attention as best as possible, because even when I'm supposed to receive guaranteed attention from someone else in this experience with me, that's not always going to be the case. But as long as attention is being paid, it doesn't really matter where that's coming from. And I remember feeling this way when I was driving down a hill one day, and I'm driving down and I am in just like a particularly chill mood that day. And I'm just cruising and I'm going like 10 miles underneath the speed limit, but we're in like a neighborhood. So it's like 30 miles. So I'm driving like 20 in the States. And a car runs a stop sign and bolts right past me, and I was probably like 20 feet in front of their supposed stop sign, and I had already slowed down because I could see them coming, like, and I was just like, oh, I don't think they're gonna stop. And they didn't stop. And I just like, all right, at least one of us is paying attention. That's all we really need. I ever thought, because before I used to get pissed at our drivers. I used to be like, what the fuck, man? We share the road, you dick. Stop at the stop sign. How hard is it? You know,
Goddamn eyes.
open your goddamn eyes.
I don't have 4 eyes for
what I
both
mean?
of us.
That's not fair. That's bullshit. I stop at the stop sign. Why can't you? You know, and I used to always get like furious with other drivers. And then in that particular moment, in this example, I was just so relaxed and paying attention to everything that was happening in that moment that I happened to be in. And I was pivoting in such a seamless way that I could see the other person was on their phone as they drove past me. They did not even register that they drove past the stop sign, let alone that they drove past another car. Mm-hmm. And I had saw them and I was just like, wow, both of us aren't really required to pay attention, but as long as one of us is paying attention and doesn't take it personally that the other isn't, it's an opportunity that if somebody had been in the car with me, they would have seen me not blow up over an assumption that somebody's supposed to act a certain way, that someone is supposed to consider me the other driver. I didn't take it personally. And so that's just, you know, like there's more than one response. You can get angry, or you can pay attention that you're probably only getting angry because you're taking in very limited considerations. And that's why you're so upset. But if you were to take in another consideration that, you know, that person isn't paying attention, and I don't know why. I don't know why they're not paying attention, but I was, and that was enough for both of us because I gave us an opportunity to not have a lack of attention become incredibly harmful, you know, in that moment. And so going forward, as I drive, when I'm driving, I pay attention as best as possible. And I don't take it personally when I see other people not taking as much attention as maybe they could, because I remember being in that mindset. I remember driving past stop signs and not noticing. I remember where that came from. And so it's like, well, if I can give us a little bit more space, maybe we can make something different. But if both of us keep looking at the other, pointing fingers, then we're only going to be perpetuating the same thing that we're stressing ourselves about, that we're trying to soothe ourselves about. So maybe less focus on the soothing and more focus on why we want to soothe ourselves.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But be careful. Don't use the quest to figure out why you want to soothe yourself to soothe yourself.
Yeah.
Very
So
important.
that can be a thought-based distraction too.
Yeah.
It's like
It's a
my
slippery slope.
mind is sharp enough that I can figure out everything, and I can just think my way to, you know,
Do you need to?
a guarantee.
Do you need to? It really is just that. Like, if you weren't doing that, that's my problem with the whole I think, therefore I am.
Oh, it's a brutal
Like,
one.
you mean if you weren't thinking, you wouldn't be?
Disappear.
Right?
That's how much of an addiction it
That
is.
sounds like madness.
Yeah.
Like, it sounds like madness. The only time I'm here is when I'm thinking about myself. The fuck?
I wish that it was that way, that if you didn't think about yourself, you just
I'm invisible now.
Like, hold on, I gotta think.
disappear and I
What do I
pop
think?
up
I gotta
in
remember
smoke.
myself. Look,
Life is terrifying.
You see an old lady walking her dog.
Oh no, she stopped thinking.
A moment of peace.
The dog
she
looks
looked
back.
too
Where the,
relaxed.
where the hell did
relaxed into
Martha
the
go?
ether.
Oh, man. I should take a moment just to remind everybody, hi everyone, and we appreciate you for being here, that we have a call-in show in about 20 minutes.
Indeed.
Very excited. We haven't done this in a little bit. Call-in shows are dope. You can be on the episode for up to 10 minutes. Just call in, share your point of view. You can
Yes.
share a story. You can ask a question. You can tell
Share a
us we're
victory.
full of shit.
Oh, one of those
You
two.
can show, yeah. Oh yeah, no, the full spectrum is there. Just be
You can try
respectful.
to bullshit us or share.
That's all we ask, is that you try to be respectful and
Right.
just remember that It's just a conversation.
Yeah.
It's just a conversation, and if you really are so confident in your point of view and the fact that you want to tell other people that you're wrong, I would ask you, do you need to?
Yeah.
Is that what you need to do?
So
Because
why?
that's likely going to change why you have the conversation and how.
Mm-hmm.
Do you have to convince someone else of your point of view? And that's so much. Another thing Levi and I were chatting about this morning was like food and diets, and just how much there's this collective assumption that there's something out there that's a silver bullet. That's an answer. It's like, oh, diet specific. Like, oh, just gotta, not eat carbs, or don't do this, or eat, only vegetables, or whatever. And there's very sensitivity in that approach.
Yeah, attention not required.
Yeah. Oh, and that's for everything. It's like, and that's kind of underlying, I don't know, response to things like, oh, you're not big on capitalism or people being super selfish with everything, or where that comes from. You must be communist or socialist, and it's the same sort of no. There's a lack of attention. There's a looking to a structure. Same with religion, looking to someone else to give you the answer, and then you just following those things, following the right diet, and you just kind of build those things up, and there's very little attention that's necessary when you're following something like that. But then there's very little ability to be, I don't know, almost cool with yourself. It's like you can only be cool with yourself if you're doing all those things
Right.
correctly, if you're following all the rules
Exactly.
perfectly. And the alternative is realizing, there are no rules. There are no rules to life, and what you're left with is just sensitivity, is empathy, moment to moment, is the ability to put yourself in someone else's shoes. And like the reason
Yeah.
that we want to believe in something, the reason that we want to, think that we know, what the right thing to believe in, or the right diet to have, or whatever it is, and the alternative is not. The alternative is being willing to admit that you don't, and what you got is where you're at and the step that you're on, and there's no guarantee whatsoever about what's next, but there isn't so much of a need to, when you're not holding on to those things so much. So,
Yeah,
yeah.
absolutely. Life is a gray area, but that's very much what we run from. There's got to be a right way. Somebody's got to know it, and it's not until you recognize, like, maybe nobody does. Maybe nobody knows how to live your life. Maybe nobody even knows how to live theirs. Maybe it's not something we can know. Maybe it's something we can only feel out moment by moment and get better at doing so as we pay attention, as we continue down the path. But that means that each and every step of the path is important as an opportunity to open your eyes a little wider, to take in a little bit more, to be able to understand a little bit more of what it is that you're running from or running towards, a little bit of why you're running or why you're not moving forward, or why you even need to consider any of that shit. We had somebody today on Discord ask a great question. I'm feeling really low on energy, and I would like to get some stuff done, but I don't feel like I have the energy to do so. What should I do? My response was, do it anyway.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's like, you're using a lot of energy thinking about how much energy that you don't have, or how you're going to get.
You're even entertaining the idea that
More
the
energy.
idea that you don't have energy is correct.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Do you know that? It's the same thing with like, oh, I'm feeling really anxious right now. It's like, if you didn't start thinking about the thing that you're anxious about, like, are you afraid? Are you anxious? Like, are you really? And when you look at it itself, it's like, oh, maybe I'm not. Am I? I don't know. Huh. I kind of have to think about that, or confirm to myself that I'm low energy or whatever. And you can do that even with, sleep, for example. You wake up and you're like, oh, I only got 5 hours of sleep. Therefore, it means I'm going to be tired all day.
Yeah,
Instead of like, you don't know.
exactly.
That doesn't guarantee anything. But then you don't get that feeling of like, oh, I'm doing the right thing if I get 8 hours so much. But yeah, we
It is
got to
time.
wrap up here.
Time for a very short 15-minute break where we are going to go outside, and then we'll come back in for a little Q&A action. I'm very excited for the call-in show. Do join us if you can. And thank you so much for joining us today. This has been a blast.
It's been awesome.
Thanks,
For tuning
everyone.
in. Peace.